Welcome to World History Lesson 18. The National Assembly. Our lesson objectives are: explain the purpose of the National Assembly, understand the document known as the Rights of Man, explain the meaning of Bastille Day, recognize the beginning of the new Constitution of France. The French king called a meeting of Parliament in the spring of 1789 because the king required money. When Parliament convened, it became obvious which estate was the most popular. People traveled from all over France to cheer for the third estate. It also became clear that some members of the clergy wanted to give peasants some rights and reduce the taxes that the peasants paid. In June of 1789, the members of the Third Estate found themselves without political power. The members of the Third Estate went on strike and formed a new group called the National Assembly. King Louis XVI called another meeting of Parliament at Versailles, near Paris, but refused to allow the Third Estate to join the meeting. Members of the Third Estate would not leave until France had a new constitution. On June 23rd, Louis XVI gave a speech asking for some reforms to the political system. The proposed reforms were too little and too late as the Third Estate became more and more powerful. Members of the clergy were already joining the Third Estate, and some nobles were joining the Third Estate. Louis XVI agreed that the estates could meet as one, and France had its first National Assembly. Louis XVI realized that he would be forced to accept a new constitution, but his advisors refused this. When Louis XVI met with the Assembly, made certain promises and agreements, but at home he denied this to his wife, advisors, and friends. An example is that he called the army to come for his protection, but told the National Assembly that the army was present for their protection. Louis XVI told his wife that the army was there to eject members of the National Assembly. During the time of the National Assembly, there was widespread violence and hunger strikes throughout France. On July 14, 1789, the people of France finally rebelled against the government. Peasants formed mobs throughout Paris and other cities, attacking many government prisons. An important reason for the attack is that gunpowder and cannonballs were secretly stored in prisons that also held political prisoners, so the mobs were able to gain weapons to fight. In France, the primary government prison is called the Bastille, and the attack on Bastille became the symbol for the French Revolution. Today, the French celebrate July 14th as their Independence Day and is known as Bastille Day. Louis XVI was nervous and scared of the revolt, and he went to Paris with promises to make sweeping changes and help the common people. His announcements were met with cheers, and he promised to move the army away from Versailles as well as to listen to the National Assembly. During the month of July, many nobles were attacked throughout France. To the lamp post, screamed the angry mob, and they hanged the nobles. In the countryside, the peasants also began to revolutionize. Palaces were burned, nobles and their families were killed, and many nobles began to leave France in order to save themselves. In August, the National Assembly passed a Declaration of Rights of Man, which gave equal rights to all citizens of France. Louis XVI did not want to sign this document because he was an absolute monarch and refused to give up absolute power. September brought more violence in the cities and countryside. One night, the people marched into Versailles and at 3 o'clock in the morning reached the king's palace. After threats from the angry crowd, Louis promised to sign the Declaration of Rights of Man. Fun fact: the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens of 1789, which proclaimed natural, imprescriptible, and inalienable rights, served as the models for the 1948 United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. After the French Revolution, over 10,000 African slaves would be freed, and it would become legal to practice the Jewish and Protestant religious beliefs. In October, the royal family and the National Assembly met again in Paris. The National Assembly began to write a constitution for France, which was completed in 1791. All programs from the old regime were removed. People were given equal rights, including the right to vote for their leaders. The king would stay in power, but much of his actual power was taken away. On September 30th, 1791, the French people had a new constitution and the National Assembly broke up. Although the French system of government was completely changed, the revolution was just the beginning. What next? Take the time to go back and review the lesson on your own. After your review, complete the lesson review for the lesson and submit for grading. Remember, your submission should follow all the rules for standard written English. All submissions must be written in your own words and sources used cited at the end. How to cite sources in APA format. When you reference a source within an APA-style paper, whether it is using a direct quote, repurposing an image, or simply referring to an idea or theory, you should insert an in-text citation, the author's surname and the date of publication within parentheses, straight after a direct quote. The URL citationmachine.net will assist you in creating citations.